Everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a really exciting one for you today because we are unpacking a massive, fundamental shift that is happening in the business world right now. For decades, the rules of global trade were built around pretty much one simple metric, right? Price. Who can do it cheapest? But, well, that era is officially ending. We are moving incredibly fast from a price-based economy to a proof-based economy. Transparency is quite literally the new currency of global business, and at the very heart of this shift are two massive concepts you've probably heard floating around: ESG and the newly established IFRS S1 standard. Look, if your business trades, manufactures, or supplies products across borders, you are part of a global supply chain, which means you're suddenly being evaluated on a completely new set of rules. So let's get right into it. Here is our quick roadmap for today. We're going to cover the new global trade reality, what ESG actually is, the IFRS S1 standard, the 4 pillars of disclosure, the practical steps to compliance, and finally, what this all means for the future of your business. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's jump in.
All right, part 1, the new global trade reality.
So take a look at the world right now. Global supply chains are quite literally being rebuilt from scratch before our eyes. Between tariffs, trade wars, and regional conflicts, traditional networks have just been shattered. Long-standing supplier relationships are breaking down all over the place, and a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises are suddenly caught right in the middle of this massive transition. Which brings up a really urgent question. Is your business ready for this? Because right now, large buyers and multinational corporations are facing immense regulatory pressure themselves. To keep their own licenses, funding, and public reputations intact, they absolutely must prove that every single partner they work with aligns with responsible practices. They are demanding total transparency from every single link in their supply chain. It is no longer just about delivering a good product on time. You have to actually prove how you operate.
Which brings us to part 2. What exactly is ESG? To truly understand this shift, we need to look way beyond pure profit and unpack the core acronym that's driving this whole accountability movement. You hear it everywhere, ESG. But what does it actually mean? Well, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. These are the 3 fundamental pillars that shape how modern organizations operate, measure their impact, and report to their stakeholders. The environmental piece, that measures your direct impact on nature, things like your energy use, waste, and carbon emissions. The social factor looks at how a business treats people. We're talking your employees, your local communities, and your customers. And finally, governance. This covers how decisions are made behind closed doors, your transparency, your ethics policies, and how accountable your leadership actually is. Put it all together, and these 3 dimensions define your company's true performance in ways a traditional profit and loss statement just can't show.
Now, I want to point out something really interesting here because a lot of people get this mixed up. Notice the stark contrast between the outdated concept of CSR and the modern reality of ESG. Corporate social responsibility, or CSR, was historically all about voluntary good deals, right? Donations, community projects, ethical branding. It was basically a way for a company to say, hey, we care. But ESG, it goes so much further. It's strictly measurable, it's driven by hard data, and it has to be deeply embedded into your core operations. Where CSR was this nice philanthropic external statement, ESG says we can prove it. Modern stakeholders, they don't just want warm and fuzzy intentions anymore, they demand data-backed action.
Okay, moving on to part 3. Enter the IFRS S1 standard.
So with everyone suddenly demanding all this measurable data, things were getting pretty chaotic. The global market desperately needed a common language, and that is exactly where the International Sustainability Standards Board, or the ISSB, stepped in to create a brand new global rulebook. And I really want you to focus on this date right here, January 1, 2024. That is the effective date for the IFRS S1 standard. This is incredibly important because it tells us this is not some distant futuristic trend that you can just ignore for the next 5 years. No, this is a present reality. The rules have already changed, and your business is being evaluated against these standards right now.
The whole point of this standard is captured perfectly in its official objective. It exists to require companies to disclose detailed information about their sustainability-related risks and opportunities. Why? Because investors and partners absolutely need this decision-useful, comparable information before they hand over any resources or capital to your entity. It's all about creating an honest dialogue so that capital naturally flows toward businesses that are transparent and genuinely prepared for the future.
So, how does it actually work? Let's dive into part 4, the 4 pillars of disclosure. What's great is that this framework takes a ton of very dense regulatory jargon and organizes it into a clean, super scannable checklist for business leaders. The 4 pillars are governance, strategy, risk management, and performance and targets. If you want to comply with IFRS S1, your reporting basically has to cover these 4 specific buckets.
Let's unpack these real quick so you know exactly what's expected. Under governance, you have to clearly disclose the processes and controls your leadership uses to oversee sustainability risks. Then there's strategy. This is where you lay out your actual game plan for managing those risks and also how you plan to leverage new opportunities over the short, medium, and long term. Hand in hand with that is risk management, which just asks you to explain the exact methods you use to spot and prioritize those risks before they become a problem. And finally, performance. This requires you to track your real-world progress towards any targets you've set for yourself or targets that are mandated by law. Together, these 4 pillars create a complete, totally transparent picture of how sustainability impacts your cash flow, your access to finance, and your overall cost of capital.
All right, let's get practical. Part 5. Steps to ESG compliance. It's time to pivot from the theory to the actual execution. How on earth do you get this done? Especially if you're running a smaller or medium-sized enterprise and you really don't want to drown in complexity or drop a fortune on over-engineered software. Well, first, you need to know exactly what you are measuring. Here are some concrete, real-world examples of the metrics you should be tracking across the 3 pillars. For environmental, you might measure your carbon emissions or simply your energy use. For social, you could look at employee turnover rates or maybe your community investments. And for governance, it could be board diversity or strictly tracking your ethics policies. Look, you don't necessarily have to track every single thing on day one. The key is to identify the metrics that are the most material to your specific industry.
Once you actually know what to measure, you just follow this straightforward 7-step reporting blueprint. Step 1, as we just discussed, is identify metrics. Step 2 is choose a framework like IFRS, SASB, or GRI, depending on what your stakeholders want to see. Step 3 is collect and analyze your data. Step 4 is prepare the report, where you seamlessly combine all those hard numbers with the narrative of your overall strategy. Then, Step 5 is assure data. You might want to get it verified externally just to build a little extra trust, which lets you move to Step 6, publish and communicate it clearly to the world. And finally, Step 7 is monitor and improve. Because let's be honest, this is an ongoing journey, not just a one-time event. This right here is exactly how any organization can turn their sustainability promises into a credible, fully compliant report.
Which leads us directly to our final section, Part 6, the future of business.
We really need to step back and look at the big picture here, because I want to reinforce why adopting these frameworks is quite literally a business survival issue. I want to make it incredibly clear. Transparent ESG reporting is not just about ticking some annoying compliance box. When you do this right, it delivers massive, tangible returns for your company. It seriously boosts investor confidence, which attracts responsible capital. It strengthens your brand reputation with both customers and regulators. Tracking all this data actually reveals hidden operational inefficiencies, which ends up saving you money. Plus, values-driven workplaces naturally see an increase in employee engagement and retention. But above all else, it builds your business's resilience against future market disruptions. Honestly, it's just really good business.
I want to leave you with this really hard-hitting takeaway. Think of it like this. ESG is not just compliance. It is literally your passport to participate in the global economy. If you don't have a passport, you're not getting on the plane, right? If you cannot demonstrate your ESG compliance with real data and documentation, your contracts and your long-term agreements are at severe risk. Large multinational buyers are not going to wait around for you to catch up. They will just quietly replace you with suppliers who can actually prove their transparency today.
So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question to chew on. The rules of the game have officially shifted. Complete transparency is the new standard. So, are you ready to prove your worth in this new transparent economy? I highly recommend you take a hard look at your own company's readiness, go explore that IFRS S1 standard a bit further, and start sketching out your roadmap to compliance today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next explainer.